The rest, I was shocked by some of the statements that were coming on the People's Voice Facebook page. They were infantile, they were hysterical, they were just wrong, they were screaming lack of professionalism. And then having people who were, emailing me, who are big fans of that whole scene, saying terrible things about the woman that they didn't know was true. This had just been infiltrated through the whispering campaign that had been sent out by these infinite love types. And it pissed me off no end. And it made me very, very glad that I never got involved with them. And I've noticed some very decent people in there, but I knew from the beginning the business model didn't make any sense from a commercial point of view. We live in a world where money matters. That's the end of it. We can't live on love. And the business structure of it just seemed to be based on getting people who meant well to volunteer for free. And all that does in the end is you don't get the big professionals. The ones who can, and when I say professionals, I don't mean money people. I mean competent journalists, people like Sonia Paulton and people like that. You're not going to get them to stay on board. And second, because they're going to want more and more resources to do better and better work. You're not going to get them on board. And volunteers, all that does is it creates resentment. If they spend all day working there for no money, they'll suddenly turn on you. That kind of a thing. And I don't know if that happened there. You'd probably tell me about it. But am I right or am I wrong or am I off base here?
Well, I never actually worked out of the office. I only ever produced my show remotely from home and sent it in. The original plan was that I was going to turn up each week and do my show live, but it didn't work out that way. So I was never a part of the daily happenings in the office. And from what I hear about what the atmosphere was like there, I'm very glad that I wasn't, because I can't imagine the energy was particularly pleasant to be a part of. I've heard stories of disgruntled volunteers and I've read some of their accounts. I've read all sorts of stories about the sort of shenanigans that went on in the office, which may or may not be true. But I think the common denominator is the fact that it didn't turn out to be the sort of channel that we were told it would be. It wasn't delivering the type of programming that so many of us expected it to. Nothing about it felt right, really, and nothing about it seemed to work from day one.
Well, a few people have said that to me, that the whole idea was to be set up, it was hardwired for failure, which is incredibly cynical. And let's not say that's true, because we may be, saying things about people here that's not fair. Again, we're rumoring as well. We
don't know. We can only speculate.
We don't know. So let's not be bastards. Well, me anyway. I don't want to be a bastard about it. And that's the way. I think we just be nice about it. But I do think I totally agree with everything you say. It didn't feel right. There was an energy there that was not right. There was something about that big ass donate button was very off-putting on the page there. Again, TV evangelism, send us your money, put your hand on the screen so Jesus can save you, all that kind of thing. There seemed to be an element of that there. And also, if you look at what groups like Red Ice and UK Column and others do on a very limited budget. I mean, UK Column are literally run out of a closet. I'm not kidding you. The studio is literally a closet in an office building in downtown Plymouth with a blue screen. And if you see the output that they put out daily, news stories on a nothing budget, and then you see you compare that to what the People's Voice is doing with a healthy budget, it's obvious that something was very, very wrong there.
Yeah. I mean, programming can be put out at low cost or no cost at all. I host my podcast on SoundCloud, and I pay an annual fee, which isn't that much, and I've got unlimited potential there to post up audio all through the year. And then you've got Red Ice Radio, as you say, which is all audio-based. They put some videos up, but they don't have a TV studio as such. And they just host podcasts. And I would imagine that they're able to keep the costs significantly lowered by just keeping their output in audio form, which is enough for a lot of people. You don't have to have in-vision stuff to get the information, and in fact many people find it more convenient to just absorb audio information. I certainly do. I burn programs to CD and I listen to them in the car when I'm driving late at night. That's how I get all my knowledge. To me it's a distraction to have to look at a screen. So it strikes me that this operation could have started out doing podcasts and a few YouTube videos and just doing on a low-key kind of basis, low-budget basis, and then build gradually from there and tread cautiously and see what the reaction is and build organically and gradually.
It hit the ground running on a wing and a prayer.
Mm.
That's just doomed to failure. It's not going to work. You build everything from the grassroots up.
While we're on similar kind of ground, I just want to get into Russell Brand briefly. I apologise for the fact that I know you've spoken about him quite a few times and had a bit to say in the past weeks and months, and there may be a few people groaning as if to say, not bloody Russell Brand again. But he does keep popping up, and he has divided opinion in a big way in this truth alternative scene, and everyone seems to have an opinion on him. My own personal stance on him is I never particularly liked the guy as a comedian before he came out as this guru of the scene. I always thought that to be a comedian you had to be funny, but maybe that's just me. And there's a lot of things about his past which ring a few alarm bells for me. Hosting the original Big Brother shows, given how Big Brother's been used for social engineering and the Orwellian overtones of it all. His association with the BBC, close mate of Jonathan Ross, BBC man. His marriage to Katy Perry, MK Ultra mind control subject, almost certainly. And that very strange video that you can get on YouTube where he flashes that ring that says obey, and she seems to sort of instantly switch into an alternative personality, and some people have said he may well be a handler. Then he's wearing Baphomet t-shirts and rings, and there's the case of tattoos that seem to appear and disappear between different photos, and some people have speculated on whether they could be fake. That's just my own personal stance on him. Like I say, everyone seems to have an opinion. I just feel it's worth addressing him quickly before we move on, and I just wondered what your observations were.
He's an idiot.
Okay.
That's it, he's an idiot. He's an idiot who has, for some reason, been given the offer, and willingly took the offer. End of story. And I know when he was given the offer after the Sashagate scandal. Up until that, he was just like a smutty, no talent MTV presenter. He goes on the Jonathan Ross show. He calls up Andrew Sachs. Sorry, that's Saxgate. Sorry, I meant. He calls up Andrew Sachs and tells Andrew Sachs that he shagged his granddaughter live on BBC Radio in front of millions of people, and goes to the old guy. He says to him, she was consensual, but she wasn't menstrual. So basically, he said, I'm sorry to use crude language, but he fucked his granddaughter because she wasn't on her period on live radio, caused a man to. That's the only reason he did it. Mr. Spiritual. Then and we've all made mistakes in our lives. We've all done things we shouldn't have done. But I don't think anyone's ever done anything like that on live radio that I can remember. And I don't think I've ever even heard Howard Stern, who I'm actually a fan of, go that level. Okay, and this is on the so-called public broadcaster, so it's paid for with tax. It's paid for with basically a tax. Now he vanishes for a while, heads off to Hollywood, does his little whole Hollywood thing, and then reappears in the UK again as Jesus Christ. So in between then the Saxgate and now he got the offer. He got the offer. Look, someone said to him, almost certainly the Fabian Society or the London School of Economics, there's this thing called the Awakening Up movement, the Truth movement. They're getting really big. They're getting really popular. And they believe all this kind of stuff, that governments are evil and all this kind of BBC are evil, that shelters pedophiles. You're going to take them over as their messiah, but you're going to steer them back into the mainstream. You can talk about spiritual consciousness all you want. You can do all that kind of thing. You can mention stuff about how bad Fox T and all may tell them things they already know. Yeah. But Russell, when we send you out there as the savior of the truther Christ, never talk about 9/11. Don't talk about fracking. Don't talk about GMOs. Do not talk about the BBC sex scandals. And if you do, swallow it in a world of mindless waffle.
Yeah.
So it just looks like you're saying you're really clever, like you did with the Rolf Harris video the other day. And they will follow you because this is their look. They're so desperate for a Christ. They're so desperate for a God. And, you know, you're to take them off. You're to lead them away from, because we don't like what they're up to. We don't like the fact that they're actually catching on to us. And that's what happened. And I don't care what anyone says. And I'm right about it. And it's as clear as day. And the circumstantial evidence is his girlfriend, Gemma Khan. Gemma Khan of the Goldsmith family,
yep.
Billionaire bankers, City of London, Wall Street, very heavily involved in South African apartheid during the slavery days, I might add, which we never talked about. He talks about distribution of wealth. Well, give me your money. Give me your money, Russell Brand. I'm broke. Lots of people are broke. Give them your money directly.
Yeah.
He goes to London like Jesus entering Damascus, stands on the stage with his shirt off in a Jesus Christ Dionysian pose, holds his arms out wide to look like he's being crucified deliberately. That was all staged. Then gets on stage and says nothing about, we did that and all this crap, and everyone is like spellbound by him. I'm sorry. If you at this point are still spellbound by Russell Brand, okay, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. I don't care what you think about me. I don't care what you think about what I'm saying about this. You're an idiot. And you're Sheeple 2.0, and that's the end of it.
I'll tell you what it reminds me of. A few years ago, well, it's 2005, you had Kanye West, the rapper, who up until that point had been a very well-respected kind of conscious hip-hop artist. He put out meaningful music. His original album, The College Dropout, 2003, was a kind of modern classic. Lots of great points he was making in that music. It was inspiring, it was uplifting, many of the tracks were. He appeared on a telethon in 2005 in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. And he was on screen with Mike Myers, the Austin Powers actor, and they're reading off a script. But Kanye West goes off script for a moment, and spontaneously, right off the top of his head, he says George Bush doesn't care about black people. And this went out on live TV. And then he gets back on script. And ever since that moment, I noticed Kanye started to change. His music output changed. And it gradually sort of degenerated into the sort of toxic, mind-controlling garbage that he's putting out now. Absolute just filth and rubbish. And, he started behaving erratically in public, and he started spouting his famous rants, and he just became a total arsehole. And it all seems to have stemmed from that moment where he went off script and off cue. And when you think back to the Russell Brand Saxgate thing, the fact that he talked about Andrew Sachs's granddaughter on that live BBC show, and that was obviously off script, that was a spontaneous thing, it seems that from that point on, Russell was kind of recruited to start to do a bit of work for the control system. And I wonder if there are parallels between these two instances, that the minute you go off script and start doing your own thing, the control system that likes to puppeteer you ain't having it. And that's when you're called on to start to doing a bit of work for them.
Well, I think you may be onto something then, Mark, because look at Bono and U2. I mean, everybody slags off U2 and Bono for all the globalist stuff. Quite rightly, I might add to, getting their pictures taken with getting his pictures taken with George Bush. Indeed. But if you look at U2, if you go back and find old copies of the New Musical Express, Sounds, or Rolling Stone, or any magazine that Bono was interviewed in pre-Live Aid, up until the War album, right? Mm-hmm. And Unforgettable Fire album, which is a very interesting. Those four albums are actually quite interesting albums. They deal with very dark themes. Bono was lashing into George Bush over everything from Grenada to, not George Bush, Ronald Reagan. Hitting him with the CIA, big time going on about the Contras. I mean, these were hardcore issues at the time. The murder of nuns down in El Salvador by the CIA. I mean, he was getting involved in some very deep stuff, Bono. Suddenly he's one of the control system people, and the hardcore opinion is gone. And even their whole sound changes. So, U2 came out of punk rock. What were they doing playing like Bruce Springsteen? Something happens to them, and in 1989, I mean, I think early U2 were quite a good band. I really do, and I think they really did they were politically right on. They did a lot of good stuff here in Ireland. But they made statements against the IRA that were quite, and the loyalists that were quite dangerous back in the time they did it. And so there's a video of U2 playing a gig in Dublin, and Bono is acting very strange on stage, and he says, "We're going to have to vanish for a while now, and allow us to think it all up again." And then they came back as the U2 bullshit globalist band they are today.
Yeah.
So I think, look,
yeah, something happens to
you're
them.
in the music business. I was in the music business, right, in New York. We both know that there's a certain point where if you want to go to the next level, deals are made with lesser demons.
Absolutely,
and eventually
right.
that trail of lesser demons leads to the devil, which is what Michael Jackson called Tommy Mottola. He said Tommy Mottola is a devil.
Exactly. Those were his words. And an astute observer can pinpoint the moment in, an artist's career where that seems to happen.
Yeah.
You can see where Kanye's music changed, where U2 changed, as you just said. And you can apply that to the Beatles as well. I've just done a podcast on this theory that Paul McCartney may be really dead and he was replaced by an imposter. It doesn't really matter what you think of that theory, but either way, whether you think Paul McCartney was replaced or the Paul McCartney we have today is the original one, you've got McCartney now hanging out with the Queen, throwing up Baphomet symbols at concerts, and hobnobbing with the establishment. And that's a far cry from the original sort of ethos of the Beatles. And there was a point where the Beatles' music obviously changed around about 1966. It went from that simplistic sort of R&B, rock and roll music to all the psychedelic stuff. And you got to wonder, is there a point where, someone steps in and says to these artists, okay, it's time to elevate you to the next level now. This is what we need you to do for us. And I suppose if you get made an offer like that, you can't really say no. You could say no. You could say no, but the consequences would be pretty bad, I would suggest. And so that's why so many of these artists figure that they've got no alternative but to say yes and play ball.
Well, look at the body count in rock and roll. Just look at the body count. And not only of people in bands, but also their family members. Lots of them seem to have children who've drowned, or girlfriends who've been murdered, or mysteriously found dead.
Mick Jagger's girlfriend just the other week.
And on the subject of the Rolling Stones, they started out as a basic, classic, very good British blues band. And at some point in the late 60s, Brian Jones is found dead. And the next thing you know, they're hanging out with people like Kenneth Anger. Yeah. And it's Sympathy for the Devil, Beggar's Banquet, like Exile and all. Let's be honest here. Some of those records are fantastic. But at the same time, too, the band becomes something else completely different. There's even an interview on YouTube with Bob Dylan where he's being interviewed by Ed Bradley of the American TV show 60 Minutes, and he says to him, I made a deal with the big man.
That's right.
And Ed Bradley says, who's the big man? And Bob Dylan goes, the biggest, baddest man of them all.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's something we all know that there's demons along the way, but eventually when you get to a certain level, you meet the devil himself, and that's when you get the big offer.
And there's a quote from Ozzy Osbourne as well, being interviewed years ago, and Ozzy says, it's as if I've been taken over and somebody else is controlling me, and he says, I hope it's not who I think it is.
It could be his wife.
Well, quite possibly.
She's a dodgy history, Don Arden's daughter, and he was a big time gangster in London.
Yeah.
I mean, he destroyed the Small Faces band.
Yeah.
So there's other aspects to it as well. They find that themselves have hampers, like John Lennon. If you just it's just there's no business. I'm telling you, we all hear about how dangerous a firefighter is. We all hear about how dangerous a fisherman is. You show me a business that has a bigger body count than pop music and rock and roll, you'd be hard pressed to find one.
And so we can take this full circle back to Russell Brand, and we can speculate on, if Russell was invited to step up and do a bit of work for the control system and start doing what he's told and fulfilling this agenda they've got laid out for him, he doesn't really have the option to say no, and that could be what we're viewing here.
I think they have the option to say no, but the career is over. And I think that's why certain bands
that's a best case scenario, I suppose.
But I think but there are bands who are on their way up there comedians and actors who were on their way up there, and you can tell they pissed off the system on some level, and they vanished into obscurity or back playing clubs again.
Another one is Muse. Another band is Muse. You know, they made songs like Uprising, and they kind of disappeared, and now they've come back, and they're very mediocre and wishy-washy and not really saying anything of any substance.
I was suspicious of Muse from the beginning. I think that album is truly appalling. There's that album with that song Uprising on it. There's something not right with that album. It's recorded in a very funny way. I actually think that they were a psyop from the start, to be honest with you, Mark. Okay. And that song to me is an appalling dirge. I never trust that band in the beginning. When I heard that album, I was saying musically there's something wrong here. There's just all kinds of weird tonal qualities. The album is almost unlistenable. And I think that album is loaded with all kinds of triggers and NLP stuff. I really do. And that in the future, I think somebody will do a breakdown of Muse and figure out that they were just they were a very dodgy bunch from the start. Whoever set them up will probably find that some Cambridge research labs invented them or something. That's just my opinion on that band. But again, the truthers all fell for that. Muse, they're our band, and then they go on tour with U2. Oh, they betrayed us. This whole need for a salvation, need for a Christ-like figure, need for someone to lead them to, because it takes away the one responsibility that they fear most of all, taking care of their own asses.
And when it comes to navigating this whole truth movement, this whole arena of information, as we've said, there's so many counterclaims and counterattacks and conflicting information. It seems to me that all you're really left with at the end of the day is evidence, as far as evidence is available, and then you're just left with your own intuition and your own judgment, how it resonates with you. Does it feel right?
It is difficult, but you see, this is the wisdom process. People have to learn wisdom. They have to be prepared to know that they followed the wrong team for a while. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And this is where that comes from. It's a defending, to use Russell Brand's favorite term, the narrative. That's really what it is. And I subscribe to the whole Nietzschean idea that ultimately truth is unknowable. Absolute truth is unknowable because all language is metaphor. And there's a lot of freedom when you approach like that the truth is a journey mostly and not a destination. But so many people in this movement have been conditioned to think there's going to be a final moment of resolution, a battle of Armageddon, a day of salvation. It's all going to happen. The bankers are all going to be arrested. The Pope is going to be arrested. None of those things are ever going to happen. That's all programming you've gotten from Hollywood, that the good guy wins at the end of the movie and runs off into the sunset with the girl, or from religious programming where there's a battle of Armageddon and Jesus comes back. That's where you got that idea. That's where people get that idea. That's where I got that idea until we all woke up. We realized that there may not be, or there probably won't never be, a moment of resolution. But along the way, the journey is fantastic because what you're really discovering is truths about yourself, the most wonderful and important and poignant exploration of all. And maybe that's the ultimate reason for waking up. And if all of us, instead of looking for a moment of salvation or a person that brings salvation, were to all come upon that realization that the journey is really personal and internal, and it's about our own personal salvation, and enough of us did that together, then we would save the world. We would save the world. We'd save the world through our own even personal evolution, one person at a time.
We're at an interesting point here in the UK, particularly because we've got all these revelations that have come out in the mainstream press, because a lot of people don't take notice of things that are revealed until it's from a mainstream source. It can't be true unless the BBC and the Daily Mail say so, sadly. But we've had all these revelations about parliamentary paedophilia, institutionalised paedophilia and child abuse in the establishment. The Jimmy Savile saga drags on. We've had Rolf Harris being sent down in the last week, and people are shocked to discover that he was a wrong-un. And we've got this Leon Britton sort of, paedophile dossier thing brewing at the moment. And I feel that we're at the best point we've ever been for the lid to be lifted on this whole sick, sorry, filthy, corrupt, grotesque establishment that we have and the true nature of them. It's the best point we've ever got to in terms of the mainstream, the masses finally coming to accept the true nature of the people that are running this country and running the world.
Well, I've been very, very in depth involved in it, mainly through the Savile thing, mainly through my research and investigative journalism into the fact that Jimmy Savile was actually a serial killer.
Yeah.
And it's got me a tremendous amount of attention. I'm getting mainstream level numbers hitting my websites and blogs and everything now, and I'm getting very little, what should I say, confrontation against that by most ordinary British people and Irish people. And I'll tell you something else. I'm generally probably in this scene known as Mr. Conservative. I take a long time to nail my colours to the mast on anything. I'm not comfortable that way, but I'm going to say this right here and now on your show, Mark, on your podcast, Mark. I think this is it. I think we have them. I think this is the one. We have now been, this is why I'm so vehement against people following the Russell Brand Pied Piper away from this. We are there. This is it. I'm not joking you. The more I look at it,
it's got to be, isn't it? If not now, then when?
This is it. This is it. And we must keep the metal to the pedal, the pedal to the metal, the angle on the grinder on the angle. We have to keep driving this one home, because I'll tell you how I know, and this is my message to the people in England. We did this in Ireland with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church were an enormous power here. They basically had everything they wanted. They ran this country with an iron fist, and it was the same pedophilia scams and the same crap that they did, that your parliamentarians are doing and your celebrities that are doing, top celebrities are doing, that we brought them down. And they have no power in this country now. They've lost all their power in a social sense, and they were completely destroyed. There you go. There's your proof. It can happen. This is the one. Now, what they're trying to try to do is, and I saw it here in Ireland when all the Catholic paedophile things took off, the Irish media was bombarded with studies from universities saying, oh, the Catholic priests, they don't really mean to be paedophiles, the nuns don't really mean to be abusive, because, if they've been deprived of sexual longings and let's let them off, be easy on them. It's not their fault. And Irish people didn't fall for that. Good. What they're doing in the UK is you saw a story in the Telegraph yesterday. They're going to try and change the goalpost like all psychopaths do and say, oh, well, childhood isn't a natural state anyway. It was invented by us. So if children want to have sex with adults, they should be allowed, which Cambridge University, of course, professors and academics, we're discussing in a major conference as late as last July. It's not going to happen. If you look at the comments on all the British mainstream newspapers, no one is falling for this. They're trying frantically to have children on shows like Coronation Street and EastEnders, having the characters in those shows having sexual relationships younger and younger, and pregnancies younger and younger, in order to create what I call the new norm, the psychopathic new norm. It's not flying. You people in the UK have your golden opportunity now. This is the revolution you've been waiting for, and this is why you must reject Russell Brand and all this spiritual conscious revolution crap. You have them on the run, and this is one of the few examples where people power can really win. Yesterday they put out some lady something Schloss or something, Butler Schoss or something like that, to head the commission on the investigation into the parliamentary paedophiles. She looks just like Jimmy Savile. She looks like Jimmy Savile in drag. They're taking the piss out of people. This is their let them eat cake mentality. They're laughing at people. Let's give them some. And she was the same one who chaired the Diana Commission. They're laughing at you. They think they're going to win, but we're uncovering their tactics and their behaviour more and more and faster all the time. Yeah. And we have them on the run. When I put out the idea first on my old radio show, The Philosophy of Now, that Jimmy Savile was absolutely a serial killer, the profiling from my own work on psychopathology, coupled with the investigative journalism of people like David A. Yallop back in the 1970s, and all the other aspects of the circumstantial evidence pointed to the fact that Jimmy Savile absolutely was a serial killer who kept momentums of his victims, and that's what half the clothes in the so-called mother's wardrobe were. They weren't his clothes, they were the clothes of women he'd murdered. This is what psychopathic serial killers do.
And he was showing them off. He did that program with Louis Theroux, where he's showing off his wardrobe
Serious psychopaths get a thrill. It's called the rush. They get a rush of dopamine, a sexual thrill, and if they can mock people on a high-profile TV program, the thrill is even greater. So he was actually getting a big sexual thrill while that was being broadcast.
Do you know what somebody suggested to me a while back? You know this sort of yodel that he used to do, the sort of this little sort of catchphrase thing of his. Somebody suggested that could well be him mocking the sound that many of his victims made when they were being abused
and murdered. Yep.
It's worth considering, isn't it?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Nothing. We're talking about a demon black magician who was working for the royals. Let's get this out. Let's get this out in the open now. These people are not like us. These are, in my new book, Valpurgis Night, I'm very heavily involved in the study of the black magic forces behind, the black hexan forces behind Germanic royalty and how they destroyed Europe. And they're also, what is the British royal family? They're Germans. And their particular form of it's sort of a black hexan paganism is definitely shows all over Savile's behavior. He was a trained black occultist. Black hexan pagan occultist. He absolutely was from that scene, and he only could have learned that because he had access to royalty. And the reason why he had access to royalty is because his mother, the Duchess, really was a duchess. She was definitely the bastard offspring of royalty, and that's why he enjoyed royal privilege while he did what he did. Now it's now come out that I had people on my YouTube channel saying, "Oh, Thomas, you're just scaring people again. You've absolutely no evidence that Savile is like this, blah 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 blah." And then the other day it comes out that he had rings made of the glass eyeballs.
There you go.
People, and here we go.
It's in the Daily Mail, so it must be true.
So then, do I get an apology? Do I say, "Oh, fair play, Thomas, you were right"? Oh no, of course they just vanish, or they'll find some other strawman argument to pick apart. Oh, you got the name of you got the sequence in which the Moors murderers killed their victims wrong. Therefore, all Thomas Sheridan's information on Savile and all that scene in Manchester in the 60s is wrong. Everything is wrong, and that's how they think and that's how they behave. But I don't care. You in the UK. This is your William Wallace moment. Yeah. This is what you've been waiting for, and you can do it without firing a shot, being antagonistic or troublemakers in terms of a violent or an aggressive sense. You can do it all just by using your minds, your brains, and not letting this story die, and digging and digging and digging until it all comes out. Because all you have to do is look at Cameron's face on that show with, what was his name? Who's that on a morning TV show in Britain? Paul Schofield showed him the list, and he looked at it, and his face literally went green, and he made a statement along the lines of, "This is homophobic." The old cultural Marxism.
It wasn't in the script, that one.
Yeah, it wasn't in the script.
Yeah,
that's it. That was the look of sheer terror that the game was up.
This has to be it. This has to be our moment.
You're not going to get an opportunity like this ever again.
Well, exactly. And, of course, the danger is that the powers that be, or the powers that have been soon, are going to use an opportunity now to divert people's attention away from all this stuff that they don't want them looking at. So it would be the ideal opportunity for them to stage one of their famous false flag terror events, or concoct some other item in the news that causes everyone to look away from here and start looking over here. And meanwhile, they can do a bit of damage limitation and recovery and start to get their stories straight and do a bit of covering up, while everybody else is focused on something else. So people really do need to be vigilant, I would suggest, in the sort of days and weeks ahead. And if something like this does occur, ask lots of questions about it.
Well, Mr. Cameron has already started talking about deadly killer viruses and all kinds of superbugs and all this crap.
This is their MO, isn't it? This is what they do.
This is how psychopaths are. This is the only way they can function, by creating another distraction. Hey, look over here! Russell Brand was distraction number one. Now they're going to have to up the ante to something a bit more heavy. So they might restart the IRA. You might have suddenly two soldiers shot dead or a couple of soldiers shot dead in Northern Ireland, or a couple of PSNI people shot dead, and suddenly the Irish and the British governments will be flooding the border with troops talking about dissident Republicans and all this crap. Something like that might happen. Just be on the lookout. It might not be as spectacular like you like you think it's going to be. It may be something very, very subtle. It may be the death of a high-profile celebrity or a royal, and they'll wrap a whole sort of new motif around that to distract you. But keep the faith, keep the fire burning, because, like I said, this is the one. And do not be distracted by. Do not see, even the false flags are great for distracting the truthers, because they'll spend all the time investigating the false flag for years and years. Yeah, which is what 9/11 was. That's why the 9/11 conspiracy was already in place long before anything happened there. Those attacks took place. They've always been there. They've been there since the day of Kennedy. So don't get caught up in like the minutia of what the new false flag is. Keep on the paedophile thing. They're never going to get away with this one, and they're never going to ever be able to water it down.
This has got to be what brings them down. It's got to be, if not now, then when. Before we conclude today, I did want to get into the question of applying humour and satire to this whole truth conspiracy arena, because you're a satirist yourself. And I often look at some of the cover stories that we're given. I mean, they're great sources of comedy to me, the cover stories that you're given for certain events. My favourite is Bin Laden killed in the Pakistan compound, i.e. house, and his body dumped at sea in accordance with his Muslim traditions, because they're respectful like that. They murder a man, but they do respect his religious leanings, and then they put dumped his body in the sea, and no, you can't see it because it's too grisly, and we do care about you. We don't want you to see these upsetting pictures. And, we didn't know where he was for all these years, but we suddenly found him watching TV, and he was on every channel as he flicked through with the remote control. I mean, that whole story was just pure comedy to me, and how Obama can come out and keep a straight face as he announces it is beyond me. And then you got the picture of the incident room where Hillary Clinton's got her hand across her mouth as if, oh my God, and they're supposed to be watching live coverage of the Navy SEALs taking out this compound, and then it emerged later that it was fake and the computers weren't even turned on, and then, oh yeah, those Navy SEALs just happened to die in a helicopter accident a few months later. I mean, that's not particularly funny, but the rest of the story is utterly farcical. And I think there is room for humour and satire in all this, because the world, when you get down to it, is a pretty ridiculous, absurd place. And it seems that the only way to appropriately respond to it sometimes is to just have a bloody good laugh at it.
The jester is the only member of court who could mock the king and queen and live. And the joker is always the last card that you put back in the deck and the first card you take out. And that's like their magic way of saying to us, we can take you down that way. And I have been using satire and humour going back many years, all my life, and right back into the early Usenet days, we were ripping the piss out of an Irish culture group, out of the sectarian groups in Northern Ireland, but on both sides. And the Republicans and the Loyalists, and also a neo-Nazi group that was starting up in Ireland back then called the Irish Nationalist Network. And I mean, so the stuff was raunchy, it was filthy, but fuck me, it was funny. I set up a Sinn Féin sex chat line where you could call up and get like a woman give you election results from like the 1932 South Armagh by-election, things like that, or the horrors the British committed against the Irish. And this stuff was so funny and so powerful that after the trouble that a Good Friday Agreement ended, I had loyalists and Republicans in Northern Ireland telling me they were pissing themselves laughing reading the stuff I was doing. And that was my way of fighting back. And and that kind of thing. And we had like there was all kinds of things like that, and it was often filthy, but it was it was done very, very funny. And I'm never going to stop that. You look at my Facebook page, I'm telling as many jokes as I am talking about serious subjects, because it's such a powerful thing. I mean, when I saw the thing where for last Halloween they had a Jimmy Savile costume, and all the sanctimonious media were like, it's offensive, we should ban it. I wanted to go out and get one, because that's a great way of reminding people of what these people in charge do.
And it'll keep the trick-and-treaters away from your door for sure.
This is what our pagan ancestors did. This is how you do it. You manifest the devil to make fun of them.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was even joking there the other day about going to a fancy dress barbecue, and I was going to go dressed as Bin Laden zombie with like seaweed hanging off me and everything. This is how you do it.
Yeah.
This is how you do it. And you know, okay, if you're raunchy and filthy and you're just raunchy and filthy, you're not funny. Okay, you're not funny. But if you're raunchy, filthy, and offensive, and making a point, you're a genius, because you can actually target the subconscious of people very powerfully. I did a stand-up event in Dublin a few months back, about 4 months back now, in front of 400 people in a hardcore mainstream comedy club. And I got out, that went down brilliantly, and I got out more truth about the psychopathic control grid and what psychopaths are, and cults and the dangers of everything else like that, and I'm ripping the piss out of people like Simon Cowell. And I got more of the truth movement out to the mainstream in that 15 minutes I was on stage than I ever have done in all the millions of views I have on YouTube and everywhere else.
Yeah.
And that tells you the power of it.
Truth comedy, that's what we need.
And it moves into the mainstream. It moves in, that's the thing. Look at the audiences that Bill Hicks and George Carlin reached.
Yeah.
Comedy and art, music will reach the mainstream.
Exactly.
Not running down the street with a megaphone or a bullhorn going 9/11 was an inside job or any of that stuff. That's what the control system wants from you. They do not want clever, funny bastards. Yeah. So be a clever, funny bastard.
Comedy hits home and music hits home.
Yeah.
In a big way. And you've got, in America, you've got the guys that do Joy Camp, and you've got James Corbett, who's a great satirist as well. And do you read Chris Spivey's work, Chris Spivey's blog here in the UK?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Absolutely.
And here in Ireland, we have a great guy and a great comedian called Aidan Killian, who's doing all the stuff about the falsehood of the banks and money and all this stuff through his own stand-ups in the comedy scene here. And he's actually doing the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So he's moved to the next level. They're out there. This is our front line. We have to box clever, because they've been very good at using this stuff against us. You look at like Ben Elton and people like that, how they've used him to push cultural Marxism very successfully, and put that, you know, we can do that ourselves, push our own agenda.
Absolutely. And they're taking the piss out of us, and they're having a laugh at us, be sure of that. So we need to do it back. And, you know, these psychopaths don't have a sense of humour. They're never going to see the world the way the regular population might, and be able to make a joke of it. So the joke is on them, ultimately.
Yeah, psychopaths and cult leaders and cult members do not get satire. They simply do not. If you tell them a dirty joke that may have maybe you're saying you're making fun of a politician, and you tell a dirty joke, they will actually think that all you're doing is saying dirty words. You're perverted. They do not see the subtle nuance.
They take it literally. They can't put it into context.
Yeah, and that's what and psychopaths only laugh when other people are laughing. They look around. That's why you have canned laughter in American comedy shows, because that was the way the psychopaths in Hollywood could only know. Oh, that's when the joke comes in, when you hear the laughing.
And it's in Obama's script.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable. All right, mate. Well, really good chat today, and we've covered some great points. Really good to kick it to you. Do you just want to remind people where they can go online to find more of your work, what your website is?
My website is thomassheridanarts.com. My latest book is called Walpurgis Night Volume 1. The link to it is on there. You can see a little book, and my other book, Animal of the Cycle, is available there. You can see a little click, which is very applicable to what we're talking about tonight, this morning, social engineering and true culture and comedy and art and everything. That's up there on a little tab called Bookshop. I'm going to be back in the UK in September to do some speaking dates. I'm already in Hebden Bridge in Yorkshire on the 15th, I think, and then I'm off to New Horizons on the 16th to the 15th up in St. Anne's. And a few of the places that you spoke in recently, hopefully I'll get up the hole in a few other places. So I'm looking forward to doing that, because I've got so many friends and supporters in England, and I always love getting back over there to see them. So look out for me over in the UK in September.
Yeah, good stuff. Are you on the Truth Juice circuit as well? Do you do those days?
I've done two tours of them when I'm in the UK, so I know those guys too as well.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, Thomas. Well, we live in interesting times, and I certainly hope you're right about this being our moment here in the UK to lift the lid. There's certainly a part of me that feels that is the case. Time will tell, but yeah, thanks for your perspectives on things today.
Thank you very much, Mark, and my best to you and your listeners and people in the UK. This is it. Go for it.
Indeed. Cheers, mate.
This is just a wrap.
Vibrations, I'm picking up. Vibrations, I'm picking up. Vibrations, I'm picking up.